Hey folks, how you doing? Roland Martin, host of Roland Martin Unfiltered. Certainly glad to have you here for the American Heart Association's Empowered to Serve Live Roundtable, which is focused on community transforming through faith, finance, and business. Obviously, these are tumultuous times, but you have people out there who have been so impacted by coronavirus, by the economy, and really where folks are is they're looking for direction, they're looking for guidance in terms of how to really move forward when it comes to their lives for them and their family. And so Empowered, of course, Empowered to Serve is an American Heart Association initiative that accelerates changes in education, business, and communities to help overcome structural racism and achieve health justice. And so all of that is so important. We've got a phenomenal panel lined up for you today. Looking forward to this really great conversation. But we want to get things kicked off with the CEO of the American Heart Association, Nancy Brown. Nancy, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Roland.
Well, I wish we could be in person, but we're now living in an all digital world, and so it goes. So tell us more about the American Heart Association's commitment to confronting these critical issues, such as structural racism, and again, committing to ending it and confronting it.
Well, let me first just thank all of the panelists and you, Roland, for being with us today. And I'm really excited to share some important news that we released during a news conference this week about how the American Heart Association is putting a bold stake in the ground to address health equity, access to care, and structural racism. We announced our new 2024 impact goal to coincide with the 100th anniversary of the AHA, as well as our presidential advisory call to action, which calls structural racism a fundamental driver of health disparities. Our new 2024 goal states that every person deserves the opportunity for a full, healthy life. As champions for health equity, by 2024, the American Heart Association will advance cardiovascular health for all, including identifying and removing barriers to healthcare access and quality. And of course, this builds upon our existing work, but really focuses on the urgency that has been identified by the pandemic's disproportionate toll on people of color. And we know that one significant barrier is structural racism, the system where public policies, institutional practices, cultural representation, and other norms work in various, often reinforcing ways to perpetuate racial group inequity. And so in our science and in our advisory, we are declaring structural racism as a major cause of poor health and early death from heart disease and stroke. And the advisory is not only a call to action, but it puts in place specific things that we, the AHA, will do and what we call on others to do. This roundtable today is a wonderful way for us to get to solutions. And again, we are so grateful to all of you for joining us. We know that people are counting on us more than ever. And please know that all of us at the AHA are committed to do whatever it will take to bring our work to life for those who need us most. Thank you, Roland.
All right, Nancy, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. We want to now go to our panel. I'm going to have each person introduce themselves. Glad to have all of them here on the panel. And so I'm trying to figure out who should I start with. You know what? I think I'm going to start with the Alpha. Alpha was the first of all, servants of all, we shall transcend all. So I know I would normally defer to Congresswoman, but I just got to go ahead and start with 06. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much, my fellow frat. My name is Frederick Douglass Haynes III. I'm senior pastor of Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. Honored to be on this panel, moderated by the phenomenal, gifted alpha man himself, Roland Martin. Holla.
All right, then. Let's see. Look, let's just go to next. You know what, Congresswoman Beatty, go ahead.
Well, first of all, Roland, let me just say thank you. And so, as a proud Delta, I will follow Alpha because I get that sequence. But let me just say, first of all, to Nancy, who is a longtime and dear friend, Thank you for what you do in leadership. And Roland, it's always an honor to be here, to the good Reverend and to my good friend Denise and everyone else who is on this call. I'm Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, and today I want to thank the American Heart Association, where I had the honor and the privilege to be on the national board for more than a decade. Today marries healthcare in the business world. So I serve in the 3rd Congressional District from the great state of Ohio. I'm vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and I've had the opportunity to introduce in the healthcare arena, whether it was related to telehealth, whether it was looking at healthcare poverty as a national crisis, as well as racism being a national crisis. And lastly, I serve on the Powerful Financial Services Committee, and I am the first ever subcommittee chair of diversity and inclusion. And I am sure we will get to marry a lot of my business thoughts with my healthcare thoughts and weave in the plan that Biden-Harris has as president and vice president-elect of this great United States.
Warren Thompson.
Good afternoon to all, and to my good brother Roland. We're double brothers, Alpha and the Boule, as you know. It's a pleasure and truly honored to be on such an esteemed panel and group. My name is Warren Thompson. I'm chairman and CEO of Thompson Hospitality. Thompson Hospitality today it's a fairly large food service, restaurant, and facilities management company. We provide food service to about 60 of the Fortune 100 companies. We also provide food service to hospitals, K through 12 school districts. We also provide food and services to about 20 of the historical Black colleges and universities. So we're the largest player in that segment. We also have a retail restaurant group. We operate about 22 restaurants today. We're actually opening a new restaurant every month going forward. So we're excited about that. We're also operating in the hotel segment. I'm involved in about 20 hotels, and we provide food service restaurants in hotels these days. I'm excited about this panel because I think first and foremost, health is a fundamental right. It's not an option. It's not a luxury, it's a right that all Americans should be able to enjoy. And I think that dovetails very well with corporations and the need that businesses have to make sure that our associates and our customers are in good health. Thanks.
Bishop.
Good afternoon, Roland. And also thank you, Nancy and the American Heart Association for assembling a stellar panel of people who have expertise that will merge and blend to have a very good and diverse conversation. I am the presiding bishop of the 10th Episcopal District of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is the great state of Texas. And so to all of the AMEs around the world, especially to those who I have an opportunity to serve in Texas. I'm also the founder and CEO of Sailor Leadership Encounter for Women, which is a premier organization that provides resources, teaching, instruction for women to get to their next level, whether they're in Act 1, Act 2, or Act 3. I'm excited because there is a group of newer generation of justice seekers and justice supporters. They are no longer waiting in the wings, but they rolled up their sleeves and were very active in this last campaign. I'm also excited to see that finally graduates of HBCUs are now being recognized for the quality education that they have received and to the leadership platform that they are now standing. Not only from HBCUs, but Greek letter women, that Black women who have always been there, courageous, resilient, who are, whose faith has sustained them through horrific atrocities, are now being recognized for their expertise and have the opportunity to be put in place where their expertise will shine and flourish and to help unite the United States again. I'm excited that we're at this position with so much potential and opportunity. And we cannot allow this opportunities and potential to be wasted in infighting and bickering and grandstanding. That we all must come together to work together so that we can live together in peace. And I thank the American Heart Association for doing this 2024 plan. And then if they're not going to do it, I'm going to challenge every other organization, every other health organization, whether it's arthritis, whether it's whatever the organization is, that they take a look at this plan and adopt it so that we can really seriously address health disparities.
Jacqueline.
Thank you for including me.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Roland. So excited to be here, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Wagner. I'm the president of the Solutions Division of Enterprise Community Partners. If you haven't heard of us, Enterprise Community Partners is one of the largest affordable housing nonprofits in the country. We have teams working at the national level and people on the ground every day fighting and striving for communities that are stronger and more resilient. And we advocate for good policies and systems at the federal, state, and local levels for the sheer fact that 1 in 4 renters, that's 11 million families across this country, pay more than 50% of their income every month on rent. And that was before COVID-19. So like so many of you, my heart is aching and I'm sickened by the disparity of deaths of Black Americans because of COVID-19. And we need to grapple with what we need to do about that. And I'm so excited that the American Heart Association is talking about the intersectionality between housing affordability and health. You both are needed. And out of this crisis, what I hope to see, what I think is exciting opportunity that we're having this conversation today. A year ago, we wouldn't have been having this conversation, but because the racial strife that's in the country and the disparity that's impacting Black people and other people of color across this country, these conversations are real and timely. And I always say, we always talk about all of these systems and how they're impacting people. But if you fix systems for Black people, we're going to fix it for everyone. So I think housing and health are essential platforms to a good life. I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
Amy.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Roland. My name is Amy Du Bois Barnett. I am the Senior Vice President and General Manager of all digital platforms for BET, which stands for Black Entertainment Television. It is the largest media brand that speaks to and also represents the African American community in this country. I'm also a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta, and I'm very happy to be here for this conversation today. Thanks for having me.
All right then, Denise. Denise, you're on mute. Denise, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you.
I swore we were going to get through everybody not being on mute, but go right ahead, Denise. Go ahead.
Hi, good day, everybody. My name is Denise Bradley Tyson, and I'm the founder of the Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund that we've been fortunate enough to launch in conjunction with the American Heart Association. And just in terms of being inclusive, I went to Stanford and Harvard Business School, so I want to say that there are a lot of good, committed Black folks who've come from those institutions as well. And my husband, my late husband, who was the first African-American CEO and chairman of Kaiser Permanente, who unfortunately passed a couple of days ago, a year ago, on November 10th. He always, in terms of the lens through which he worked, he always had the underserved on his radar and managed and became a proponent that I think put on everybody's radar, just how important the social and economic determinants are in healthy outcomes for, particularly for people of color. And I think that with the COVID crisis, that those sort of healthcare inequities have been put in sharp relief. And so I'm glad that we're having this conversation. And I've been happy and working with the American Heart Association that we've already made inroads in terms of getting support from individuals and corporations who recognize the important work that Bernard left undone, that we're committed to getting done and supporting institutions that are already on the ground in communities doing that work.
All right, last but not least, Matthew Knowles.
Thank you, Roland. I first want to say to Denise, I'm sorry to hear of your loss.
Thank you.
You know, I'm Matthew Knowles. First and foremost, I'm a cancer survivor. It's been a year and 3 months now. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. The first call I made was to my friend, Nancy Brown, who I've known now for about 15, 20 years. She has an incredible team, and I'm very proud of what the American Heart Association is doing, and to invite us all here today. I'm an educator, 14 years in teaching in colleges. I teach at Prairie View A&M, University of Houston, and Art Institute this semester. Author, motivational speaker, and 27 years in the entertainment business. Thank you for having me.
All right, then. Certainly glad to have everyone here. We've got lots of panelists. I want everybody to, we can keep our answers short and tight so we can work people, weave in and out with the various questions. I'm going to start this way, and that is when we talk about systemic racism. So much impacted this country after the murder of George Floyd on Memorial Day of this year. We have seen companies, we've seen governmental agencies, we've seen nonprofits, we've seen media institutions really look inward to examine themselves. I am terming what we're dealing with, some people call it the reckoning. I keep saying this has to be a third reconstruction. And so from your vantage point, how do you see where we stand when it comes to the issue of racial justice, battling inequality, specifically when it comes to impacting health, because COVID really put it front and center. 1 in 1,000 African Americans dying from this. Also, we're seeing, again, how so many people have been impacted based upon race. And so in this moment, this reckoning, this third reconstruction, how do you see us changing and moving forward to fix a lot of these historical issues? Anybody can jump in.
I'll just say this, that I think it's very important that we utilize the language that you have lifted up, both a reckoning, which always has to do with settling of accounts between two entities, and reconstruction. We're talking about structural racism. So we're already agreeing that racism is not about me being mean to you or you calling me out of my name, but racism has everything to do with structural realities that have produced disparate outcomes through the centuries in this country. The fact that we have health disparities in this country has everything to do, not with just our food choices, but our food options. It has everything to do that I live in a community south of downtown where we have 29 landfills. I have asthma. That makes me susceptible because of the landfills we have on our side of town. So when we start talking about this reckoning, we must use the language of reconstruction, because the structure as it is right now is designed in a diabolical fashion to ensure that we have these disparate outcomes. So I love the fact that we're talking about reconstruction when it comes to reckoning, because again, as long as the structure remains what it is, we'll continue to produce what we have produced.
From a media perspective, at BET, we've recognized that, media has long been a part of, the problem in terms of, perpetuating stereotypes that structural racism has created over hundreds of years. So over this past summer, we implemented a program called Content for Change. And essentially that program or initiative really seeks to create content that both illuminates issues that are mission critical to to dismantling, structural racism in this country, but also seeks to create another type of representation for particularly the African American community that will be more accurate, be more inclusive, and will better represent all the positive attributes of our community, and will do so from the perspective of not just media and creative content, but also through an academic perspective as well. We're engaging scholars and academics across the country, to help us really figure out what particular content we can create that will be most impactful toward the goals of this initiative.
Well, let me jump in and maybe marry what the good Reverend said and what we just heard with media. I think we need to marry everything. I think we have to do a better job, certainly in Congress, where I serve, whether it's through Congress or the Congressional Black Caucus. I find us too separated. I like what Denise said when she brought to our attention, we have good brothers and sisters everywhere, whether it's in our non-HBCU. We also have people who belong to the Divine Nine. I think the first step is we have to unite. We can't start attacking things unless we figure out how we collectively use our voices. If we start with where we are now, and this in part a healthcare panel, when we think of COVID-19, we know that we only make up 13% of the national population. But when we look at the death rates being at 20%, when we look at the number of cases being 16%, we're disproportionately affected, and it goes on and on. We could talk about the criminal justice system. We can talk about what happened to George Floyd. All of this, we have to figure out, one, how to use media, two, how to be more effective with our legislation, and three, we have to do what the American Heart Association just did. They signed on, was first to endorse the legislation that would now rescind President Trump's resolution that he did to stop all diversity and inclusion training in the federal government. We can't be afraid, whether we're in the not-for-profit sector, the media, or in Congress. We have to figure out how to bring it together. And that's what real reconstruction will be about.
I agree with Congresswoman Beatty and also with Dr. Haynes that we need to address several issues. Yes, the disproportionate placement of dumps in many areas do not have access to clean and fresh water. Somebody say Flint, Michigan. But there's also food security. In too many of our communities, there's no opportunities to get fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, the things that you need to eat to stay healthy. You can get fast food. You can get alcohol, you can get everything that can add to a serious health condition, but the limited access to fresh food. And then secondly, there is a major distrust in several of our communities of the medical health system. And that goes all the way back to, somebody's gonna need to bring it to the table, because we have these vaccines that are emerging, and are they really gonna be helpful in our community? Because we know some things work for us and some things don't. So we have to have a wonderful discussion on how we're going to make the bridge between communities that do not trust health system and how we can help them be trusted. And that's where the faith community comes in, because we can be a part of that bridge. As they are a part, whether they're in the community, a part of your church, or not a part of your church, we can provide a bridge to help people to go get the treatments and the examinations that they need. For too many of us die of curable issues because simply they just don't trust the system.
The comments that were made about food really came home to me, because that's the business I'm in. And I sense that I have a certain responsibility feeding African-American students on HBCU campuses to offer better quality food, healthier options. As an example, when I take over a university account, I refuse to have any canned vegetables in the operation. We only use fresh vegetables, whether it's corn, whether it's kale, whether it's spinach, we only use fresh vegetables. And we have now over the years seen our young people learn that fresh vegetables taste good. Now the line forms for fresh vegetables the same as it forms for hamburgers and French fries. But what happens all too often, if I lose an account, if I lose an HBCU to a competitor, it's because we allow that competitor to come in and offer the canned vegetables again, the same quality that they would serve to a prison, and undermine the price, take the business away. The university may save $1 today, but what is it doing to our young people for the future?
Hi, it's Denise. And Mr. Thomas, I hope that we have the opportunity to talk to you at the AHA Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund about the work that you're doing around food insecurity. But I think to everyone's point, it really does take a village. It takes our faith-based community, it takes our legislators, it takes organizations like the American Heart Association, it takes corporations, it takes media partners like BET, who lead the way in terms of giving a platform to influencers, whether they're on television or across social media. One, in terms of just addressing some of the inherent sort of distrust that our communities have had with the healthcare system. And again, not to, I learned so much from my late husband in that, because of what he represented, he was sort of an agnostic, advocate across party lines, and a trusted voice that I think that we're finding, because of who he represented and with his commitment to addressing the social and economic determinants that influence health, that we have the opportunity to engage them as partners in this journey to ensure that the next generation isn't faced with the same systemic racism challenges that previous generations have faced as it relates to healthcare system. I know Bernard took a very holistic approach to healthcare, which included not only one's physical well-being, but looking at the factors which determine one's physical wellness, whether it was food insecurity, housing insecurity, mental health issues, environmental issues. And he used his platform to raise money and voices in all of those areas. But it started, and I think the fundamental thing that we get back to is economic equity for people of color in terms of ensuring that people are employed in jobs where they have a living wage, that they can afford to have housing, which that housing and food insecurity, feed into one's mental wellness. The stress factor that people, face really is a strong determinant in terms of, one's wellness. And he really he wanted people to have everyone to have access through the front door. And one of the things that he did and sort of led, but unfortunately he didn't get to see open, was the recently opened Kaiser Permanente Bernard J. Tyson School of Medicine in Pasadena. And that school has 50 students in their inaugural class where their tuition is 100% paid for. And the whole focus of that school is really sort of training up doctors who will then go back into the communities where they came from to serve populations. And they're being trained not only in mental health issues, but also food wellness. They've worked with Alice Waters on putting in a kitchen in terms of teaching these students how to cook, and so that they can advise their patients on how to work with what they have in terms of healthy food preparation. But so I'm so excited thank you again for convening this group, because I'm excited about the follow-up work that I think we have the opportunity to do together, given our commitment to changing the future of health outcomes for our community.
I want Jacqueline and Matthew to weigh in on this aspect of this conversation, because again, we are seeing lots of folks talk about what we're going to do, what we need to do. We're looking at all these different announcements, and there's a book that's a phenomenal book. It's called Operation Breadbasket: An Untold Story of Civil Rights in Chicago, 1966-1971, by Martin Depp. And this is the book right here. And one of the things, Jacqueline, that Depp wrote, out of all of these initiatives that Operation Breadbasket initiated, when it came to hiring, when it came to contracts, when it came to putting money in Black banks, hiring businesses, he said the greatest mistake that they made was that they did not have enough follow through. That what happened was there was tremendous excitement about the announcement, about the negotiations, but it was staying on top of these companies, staying on top of these banks and grocery stores to ensure what they said they were going to do, they actually did. To me, I think that in this moment where we're talking about systemic racism and how we're looking at changing the culture and shifting things, government and as well as the private sector, that is going to be the most important thing. How do we regulate and stay on these folks to make sure they do and accomplish what they say they want to do?
Well, first of all, thank you for that statement. And, it's really good to hear people talk about the health of folks. And, as a houser, one of our board members who's a doctor, her name is Dr. Megan Sandell, she always talks about housing as a vaccine. And Roland, there's no simple solution. There's no switch we can flip to undo these generations of inequality and things that we see in this country. But what we do know is you don't change what you don't measure. So first of all, we need to hold people accountable and have some impact measures where we can determine if we're tracking in the right direction. Secondly, all the things that everyone's talking about, it appears that there are many things that are going on that we can be appreciative of. But I think that we need ways to hold our policymakers accountable, our leaders accountable on all of these different things. And I think as many of the people here today, it sounds like accountability is a key of what we're doing. And I think if we could execute on these things and have a report card and share what's changing, I think we can see a big difference. And at Enterprise, one of the things that we're doing around housing and health is trying to help the 40 million people that are like on the edge of eviction in the country, and trying to measure how we're tracking toward that and what we're doing to make a difference. And I think if we start measuring what we're talking about, we can see a difference. And I would just say, when we all get tired of talking, execute, execute, execute.
Matthew.
I couldn't agree more, Roland. There's a thing also called economic racism. We don't talk enough about the economic racism in America. And as we're talking now, we have to hold corporate America, as we just heard, accountable. When they're awarding contracts, we get the crumbs. We have to, I use a phrase, talk to do ratio. We have to hold people to their talk to do ratio. And understand how entrepreneurship in the Black community. When I grew up as a kid in Gaston, Alabama, we had our own neighborhoods. We had Black grocery store. We had Black doctors and dentists and nail salons and all the businesses. Quite frankly, when we look at integration, Black people integrated. I'm not sure other cultures did. But we have to look at, as we continue using the word racism and systemic racism and looking at the foundation of racism, we just have to look at the totality of it all.
And on that particular point, Amy, the role that media plays, this is what I've long contended, that one of the reasons why we can't really address these fundamental issues is because when you look at media, the greatest export in America, the reality is American media, all the problems that we're describing in health, in economics, in housing, that's how media looks. And it's largely a white male dominated culture. And so that is the place where the light is shown on these issues. I'm Vice President Digital for the National Association of Black Journalists. We've been having these conversations with media companies, and we're talking about whether the numbers look like, and they say, oh, we can't reveal those numbers. And I'm going, but you demand that of other companies in their reporting, but you don't want to do it yourself. And so there's this notion of a reckoning. We would look to media to serve that role, but media itself has to go through this same thing with the images that it shows, with the executives who are in charge, the lack of African Americans in operational roles. Sure, well, we're getting these nice deals to be actors and directors, but who is controlling the narrative? That also has to be a part of this discussion if we're going to make the kind of change we need.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. You know that I've spent, about 20 years in media at this point, kind of going back and forth between media that addresses underrepresented communities and media that addresses, our more mainstream population. And I can tell you that, the lack of self-awareness within the industry has historically been incredibly profound. I think that media sort of pats itself on the back when it does a story about, a particular issue that impacts the community without processing that the core intrinsic representation of stereotypes that negatively impact that same community much more so than the particular, story may illuminate certain types of issues. So I absolutely agree that across media, both, companies that do represent brands that do speak to communities that are underrepresented, and frankly, more importantly, at media brands that speak to the larger population, there really needs to be even more of an acknowledgement of the fundamental role that this industry plays in terms of really making sure that we're not just, both informed about certain issues, but that we're also empowered. We're empowered to make changes within ourselves. We're empowered to make changes within our communities. And we're also empowered to protest many of the issues that we're talking about today in terms of economic parity, food access discrepancies, and just so many other, of the issues that we've discussed today. I think that, we have to have a fundamental role in making sure that we underrepresented communities are both represented in a way that reflects the totality of who we are, and that we are also aware of the things that plague our community, so that we are empowered to make those changes.
Congresswoman Beatty, you have been one of the stronger voices on Capitol Hill, specifically in this area of media. We talk about, again, accountability. I think if we're going to really make changes, there has to be this constant updating and status report every 3 months, every 6 months, every 9 months, every 12 months, because otherwise we'll get caught up in this flurry of announcements. I know one company and made this big announcement that they were going to do this $100 million fund. And then when we called them, they're like, well, actually, we really haven't figured out the details yet. We just sort of made the announcement. And I think that's what we're seeing, people who are making grand pronouncements because it's the right thing to do, but we must be vigilant, staying on folks in all these areas when it comes to, are you actually creating change, or are you simply talking about change?
Well, first of all, Roland, you are so on target with that. One of the things that I am proposing that we do is do what we did when we first started with CRA's Community Reinvestment Act. We had a report card, and we reported back through the nation. And this is something, having the strong media voices we have with you and Amy and others, and then we have the rest of us. I think we ought to have a transition team that looks at accountability. We have all of these leaders that will come in place in their respective areas. But when I think about the religious community, and I'm so glad to see my friend and soror, the bishop, I didn't see you earlier, but Roland, I just have to take a moment and pay my respect and due for her also joining us. I think we do a report card, and I think we put our team together, just like the Heart Association put this team of people together, very diverse in our lifestyles. We should have a call for action, and that we're going to put a report card out. They do that for members of Congress all the time. I proudly get Fs on the NRA, and I proudly get As when we talk about protecting our environment. And people pay attention to it. And you are so right. We have corporate America who have come before our Financial Services Committee for the first time. Why? One, we have subpoena power. Two, they have to do it because we control the regulatory system, and they have made those pronouncements that it's going to be $100 million, or we're going to have the best diversity plan, and we're going to do this. Yet when we look at women, we still don't have equal pay for equal work. When we look at the C-suites, when we look at the corporate boards, we can count the number of Black people on one hand, 4 million with a finger left over. We don't have the sisters in numbers in those positions. And that's something we should do as a call of action. And then that will take care of some of the other things. We've heard a lot about food deserts. We've heard about healthcare. We know those disparities exist. And we know people on this call have been fighting against all of those disparities and putting great ideas together. So I think you will hear from us, and I'll give credit to this group, that we call for a national report card, and we put the same types of topics in as we're discussing here, that we talk about our health and safety, and we talk about our economy, and we talk about social injustices. And if you marry those three, the rest can come.
Pastor Haynes, that was one of the things that the NAACP used to have, that report card in for the hotel industry and number of different industries as well. But on this point of media, and again, where you're constantly exposing the light, specifically with Black media, what we're actually seeing is frankly, we're seeing shrinkage. When you look at terms of where we stand with our historical magazines, Ebony, Essence, Black Enterprise, look at how digital is rising. But the reality is we're also, to Matthew's point, Black media is being starved of dollars, and that is getting not even crumbs, getting half of a crumb. So now you don't have the ability, the capacity. But Pastor Haynes, we also have to look inward, and that is of our Black media institutions. Many of them are not in a position to really hold folks accountable, because most of our attention is on entertainment as opposed to on news. And so who is going to be, from your perspective, in terms of that voice that's constantly shining the light, not in the next year or two, but really we got to be thinking the next 5, 10, 20 years. Black media also has to grapple with that. Are we still doing news, or are we so caught up in entertainment, gossip, sports, makeup, culture, things along those lines?
No, thank you so much for that. And I think that's why, this conversation right here, and I salute the American Heart Association for facilitating it, is something we've got to have on many platforms, in many areas. And I would especially say, and I thank you for asking me this question as a faith leader, because it's going to be very important in terms of the preachments, the teaching that we do to ensure that there is a lifting up of the fact that the content that we receive from Black media, the content that we receive from media, period, has everything to do with the appetite that we continue to supply. One of the things that we have to be challenged by, and I'm not simply saying this because you are presiding, but it's reflective of the reality that in many instances, we say we are hungry for one thing, but we're not willing to pay the price for it. You decided to go out and basically say, hey, I'm not going to wait to have a seat at the table. I'm going to create my own table and ask the community to support my table. And sadly, too many of us do not support, and I'm talking about financially, the kind of news that you are giving. And the kind of news that you are giving is news that basically gives us a voice. At the same time, it offers us a vision. So I think all of us have a responsibility, but especially those of us with platforms and audiences, to ensure that those audiences recognize that it's one thing for us to say, hey, I am hungry hungry for good content. I am hungry for news that gives me a voice and articulates my vision. It's another thing for us to be willing to go to the restaurant and pay for it by supporting Roland Martin Unfiltered, supporting what BET is doing, supporting what those in entertainment, in the entertainment industry and in media are doing when they are trying to do the thing that is going to benefit our community. We can't just supply the appetite. We've also got to pay the money.
Warren, I want to go to,
Hi.
I'm sorry, go right ahead. Go right ahead, Denise.
I think I'm always one who likes to look at the glass half full. And I completely agree in terms of your point about some of our Black media institutions being underfunded and needing more support for the community. But I do want to call out some of the programs that I think are getting it right. For me, Blackish is one of them. In terms of, while it's entertainment, I think that they do a really good job of integrating relevant issues. I just saw the episode they did around the COVID crisis and just the importance of us social distancing and being within our bubble. And even in the Bay Area where I'm based, I've seen more Black news anchors being hired. And as a result of that, to your point, the stories and the lens through which some of these issues are being looked at has been magnified in terms of specials that have been on air. And I see even among the established Black news anchors at some of the networks, I see them sort of using their power to bring more stories to light that impact us as a people. But there's more work to be done for sure.
The reason I'm right, absolutely. The reason I'm raising that, because again, we can talk about Warren, we can talk about structural systemic racism, but I think back to Robert Abbott, who was the founder of the Chicago Defender. He would put these 10 points on the masthead and in terms of breaking down Jim Crow. And then when they would achieve one of those, he would remove it and replace it with someone else. But they served as watchdogs. They were the ones who were constantly pushing, constantly challenging on these points. And I think when we talk about our institutions, we have to be thinking about institutions using our collective power. I purposely, when I mentioned the Divine Nine, I've been saying this for the longest, and the same thing applies to the Boule. You can throw in the links, you can throw in other groups. We have what I call, we are vertical and we're horizontal, international, national, regional, state, undergrad. We have programs impact folks from elementary school all the way through college. But the question is, are we maximizing our institutional organizational leverage to be able to change these things? And then in 67, in King's book, Where Do We Go From Here? This is literally what he said. I think it really works with all of this. He said there are already structured forces in the Negro community that can serve as the basis for building a powerful united front. The Negro Church, the Negro Press, the Negro fraternities and sororities, and Negro professional associations. And so I think the challenge is, while we're talking about what needs to be changed, you've got to have entities that are positioned to force that change and hold them accountable on the federal level, on the state level, the county, city, school board, nonprofit, corporate as well, Warren.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, we saw all of those organizations coming together in terms of changing who sits in the seat at the White House in terms of the Biden-Harris successful election. And the Boule, the links, the fraternal organizations, media outlets all came together in terms of supporting the change. And so I think we need to make sure too that sort of energy, because there's still so much work to be done. This is just the beginning of taking on a lot of the issues and all the work that had been done in terms of the rolling back of hard-fought battles, that we have to stay vigilant and continue to sort of mobilize again, it was just the start, not the end.
You know, you're absolutely right in terms of the institutional and structural changes that need to take place. As an example, right now, because of what has happened in 2020 in the streets of America, you find more corporations now looking for African-American board members than ever. Just before this, I got off a call with one of the headhunters, one of the more prominent firms in terms of placing board members. He said to me, "We need more Black board members. We need them. Where are they? Where can I find them?" Almost comical. But they go to the same people all the time. He goes, "Yes, I know that person. I know that person." So, but corporations are doing that because the institutional investor groups have said, if you don't have a diverse board, we're going to downgrade your stock, or we're not going to hold your stock. And that is going to do a lot to create a difference in the boardrooms. We also, though, have to hold our own institutions accountable. And I'll give you a prime example. There are approximately 100 HBCUs in this country. The largest contract on any campus, any college campus, is the food service contract. Of those 100 HBCUs, 30 of them have outsourced their business to African-American companies. Do the math. That means 70 of them have not. Now, if you look at the 2,000 predominantly white universities in the country, only one out of the 2,000 has outsourced its business to a Black-owned firm. 1,999 of them have gone to white companies. So when do we hold our own HBCUs accountable to do more within the community so we can turn those dollars over in the community? You know, I visited an HBCU once, and I walked into an operation and I saw the name of another university on the product on the shelves, meaning the company was bringing in product, day-old product from a predominantly white institution, and selling it to the HBCU students. When we allow that to happen to ourselves in today's market, shame on us. So I would also call on our own institutions, whether it's HBCUs, the Black church. What are we doing to turn over those dollars within our own community?
I want to bring in Jacqueline here, Jacqueline, because if anybody who's paying attention to this conversation, you listen to every single person who's been speaking, it's amazing how we keep getting back to the money. Because when we talk about this issue of structural and systemic racism, we cannot ignore the fact that America is a capitalistic society. There's only one federal agency that shares a lawn with the White House, the Department of Treasury. You can walk out the side of the Treasury, and in 100 steps, you actually be in the East Wing of the White House. It boils down to money. And what I think where we have to be is put money at the forefront and not just say, okay, you got to throw money at it, but understand. Again, I go back to what King said. America didn't cost America much to allow us to go to hotels and drink out of water fountains and swim in swimming pools. He said, but will America write that a big check, a deal with the economic piece? And in the area of housing is a perfect example. 2009, we dropped to 40.9% Black home ownership, the lowest rate since 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed. It's bumped up 2 or 3 points, but the fact that we're not even at 50% of capacity of Black home ownership, and that's where most Americans are able to get their wealth. That goes to money. Then that goes into redlining. It goes into credit reports. That goes into our ability not to be able to go up in various careers, and now we're limited with salaries. And so money speaks to all of these issues. And so we have to force, frankly, the money conversation at every junction.
Well, hey, you know, this is my type of topic because money needs to have some intention. And I think we need to approach how we approach systems and policies. I think for years, this country has been rolling race neutral policies, and it's gotten the results we see on Black Americans. And we need to recognize that we cannot change things for people of color in this country without putting some equity into these strategies. And when you talk about the Fair Housing Act and ensuring that people have a place to live, I mean, we're talking about health here, but housing is an essential platform to people's success. If you don't have your health and a roof over your head, you can't get to education. You can't get to a good job. You can't grow in these things. And so I think that it's important that we not only talk about money, but how it's spent, and that we make sure that that money is trailing to the most marginalized groups in this country. And when you, Congresswoman Beatty, said about the 13% of Black Americans in this country, if we don't have housing, what we do is end up homeless. And that count is at 40%. So that means every other person in America who's experiencing homelessness is Black. We need to do better. So we need policies that are not race neutral, but that have racial equity, and that money trails behind that need.
See, Denise and Matthew, and I'm gonna pull up a couple other folks here. Again, each time we talk, go back to this issue of money. I look at this whole conversation right now. People are saying, "Oh my goodness, only 2% of venture capital money is flowing to Black and other minority-owned businesses." And so, what must we do? Well, first of all, if you step back for a second and realize, if you're talking about venture capital money, which is up here, where does venture capital money largely come from? Pension funds. Who are the people who basically make the money for pension funds? 45% are Black and brown people. And so I make the argument, if we mobilize Black and brown people to say, hey, if y'all are managing our money, you got to invest in companies that believe in racial equity. So versus trying to change it from the top, you change it from the bottom. That's what Ella Baker said. She said, it's not pulpit to pew, it's pew to pulpit. And so I think when we talk about these things, we're actually having the wrong conversation. We're trying to get the people at the top who is in their best interest not to change a system, and they're using the money of the people at the bottom. No, our deal is to inform the people at the bottom to say, put pressure on those folks at the top. That's how it changes.
And Roland, to that point, also, when we look at asset managers, we have to start learning the language, because for years we have always said minority procurement. And so what majority folks do, they say, okay, we're going to give you what you ask for. And I don't know about you, but what in math makes 3%, 5%, 8%, or even 15% something we should get happy about? So in the Financial Services Committee, I have been saying to Black folks and brown folks, we have to stop saying minority procurement, and we have to say business diversity. And we have to do just what you're saying, because if we start where we are now at the top, we're not there. We're not there in those boardrooms. We're not there in those financial institutions. So we have to start at the bottom, and we're at the bottom. We have to have our religious communities, our media, and our business folks saying, how do we get more people up here? We also have to look at this transition team. Everybody here is qualified to do something. And we certainly know people who we should be putting names and resumes in to be influencers. Whether you're in the room or looking for a job, we have to be agitators and influencers beyond just talking to 8 Black people together. We have to form coalitions, and we have to do what my sister Jacqueline has said, and I've followed her work. And as she speaks truth to power, we have to start doing that collectively, and we have to say some uncomfortable things to everybody. Denise said it, now ends on this. If we just look how we started this off and got excited because there were alphas and people threw up the Q and the Delta, and I'm sure we got some AKs and everything else, and independent folks. And then you mentioned the Boule. You know, we have our CUSAs and Archons. If we just took all of our folks, NAACP, Urban League, all of our Black healthcare, all of our folks who fight for social justices, and got together and said, here are our top 5 things. We're not asking for the world. Here are our top 5 things. And we have to take it to our own folks. So it's just something that we can think about.
Denise?
Just a couple, I agree with Congresswoman Beatty, one, in terms of the whole notion of how we frame sort of putting pressure on organizations, because for too long, when people spoke to sort of, increasing diversity among minorities, white women were the primary beneficiaries of that, as opposed to, Black and brown people, and us specifically. And I really do think back to, Roland, where you started. I think it's a two-pronged approach where we have to put pressure on both sides of the equation, both sort of at the grassroots level, working with, everyone from, our community groups to putting pressure on the pension funds. But at the same time, we can't let the CEOs off the hook, that we need to be working both sides of the equation. And I know in our case with raising money for the American Heart Association Bernard J. Tyson Impact Fund, not only have we been sort of tapping into some of the relationships that my late husband had in terms of being in the room at the Business Council meetings, being on the world stage with the World Economic Forum, but also looking at companies where he may not have had a relationship, but people say we're going to invest $100 million in sort of Black issues, that we're holding them accountable and that we're calling them and saying sort of, how are you dispersing that money in terms of, let's look at ways that in which the organizations that we're working with that are already in the community, servicing the communities, very communities you say you want to support, are doing. And one of the things that we're looking at that I think is important always in terms of the lens through which we look at these things is sort of the double impact bottom line, where it's not only just sort of the community benefit, but just looking at sort of organizations that are sustainable in terms of not only within their community, but what of these are these businesses that are out there that are scalable, that can be exported into other communities, so that we're not constantly reinventing the wheel every time we go into a community, but in so doing that we're creating more jobs, within those organizations. We're helping them to grow and expand. So yeah, I think it's truly a collective effort in terms of us being strategic on both sides of the equation, both at the corporate level and at the grassroots level.
But Matthew, well, the reason when I talk about the mobilization, and the reason that's important, because here's the reality, and you understand this. We can walk into a CEO's office, we can walk into a board of directors and say, we want to see this. But if there's no army behind you, then there's no pressure. Congresswoman Beatty used the word agitate. Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand, never have, never will. And so unless we mobilize and organize our infrastructure to then begin to apply that pressure, what will end up being is a handful of people making demands. Companies like, yeah, we'll do this. But if they don't feel that heat, they really don't have the incentive to really change this system. Because I can't think of a single thing Black folks have gotten in America that did not come as a result of intense pressure.
Roland, you were reading my thoughts, because I was sitting here saying, as Black people, we spend $1 trillion+ a year. That's the gross national product of many countries. $1 trillion. When I grew up in Alabama in the 50s, when we demonstrated in the 60s, we also had economic boycotts. We don't do that anymore. We would say, you know what, Walmart, unless you do this, we won't spend any money with you. We have to stop asking permission all the time. Ask for forgiveness, not permission. And I know that might make some people uncomfortable. That's why I'm here, to make you uncomfortable.
Well, Roland, let me say this to Matthew, because he's absolutely right. But here's my issue. Someone mentioned how white women benefited. So true, whether it was in business, when we start talking about 50% of the ownership, well, when we define minorities, it was white women. in with minorities. But here's the thing. Black people have the worst health care because of economics or lack of knowledge. But when it was time to get out there and march and put those pink hats on, there were more white women out there at all economic levels. We have forgotten about our past and getting out there. When you look at the march, you can talk about young people, you can talk about Black Lives Matter, you can talk about socialists. They're out there fighting. We don't do that anymore. We watch it on TV. We do not go out in all of our age groups and get out there or travel to Washington and march. We watch it on TV. So I think you're right, but we have to have a conversation with ourselves. When we look at where we are right now in this nation with a Black vice president-elect, we ought to be galvanizing more than who, she's there. We ought to have letters in a position of what's realistic for us to expect. When Loretta Lynch's name was put up, the white folks were against her. They thought Delta Sigma Theta sorority was some kind of gang. And they told us we couldn't come into the hearing. But we became agitators and we filled it up like a sea of red and got their attention. So when we want to do things, we can. We have more HBCUs and more Divine Nine folks coming together because Kamala Harris is a member of one of the sororities. And so now we're getting engaged. How do we keep this momentum up that we had 50 years ago? Last thing, March on Washington. We all should have been out there at the March on Washington because we're no different than where we were 53, 57 years ago. It was on TV. And I get it was COVID-19, so we get a little bit of a pass with that. But I do think that leaders have to be a little old school and a little new school, because if we don't stand up collectively and stop this divide with us, we can't move forward. We really can't. And we have a little window of an opportunity right now, because I truly believe when you have a president-elect, and I don't care what your politics are, but the real reality is Joe Biden is going to be the president. And he has said he owes Black people. So on every one of these calls, we need to be thinking about what is it that we want to be repaid for if he is saying nationally he owes us. How many people on this call sent names in for the transition team? How many people on this call have their top 3 things in their profession that they want to see? You know, and so I have asked them.
I got mine.
And I know you do, and you've called me and everything else, but we all, you know, we'll get something, but if you don't ask for it, and here's the thing, knowledge is so powerful. Many of us don't know how to get what we want into it. Some of us here. And so think about all those brothers and sisters who are out there that don't know how to be in a room with us. So I'm just saying, this has been amazing, Roland. I have listened. I've heard more about food deserts. I've heard more about how we should marry our media, our ministry, our businesses, and that it's all of us, and it's going to take all of us. So I want to say thank you. I am going to have to leave. We have the Congressional Black Caucus going on. And I just want you to know that I am running for chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. And if I am successful, I want to continue this conversation with us. And I want to be engaged. And Roland, you and Amy, as we talk about media, that has to be at the top of our list. If we don't have folks who look like us in those key media roles, that is so key for us to be able to get our message out. So I just wanted to say that, but in a few minutes, I will have to jump.
We understand. We understand.
Can I just, Congresswoman Beatty?
Let everybody know that, first of all, oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize.
Oh, mine is quick.
I'm sorry.
Hold up. Amy, Jacqueline.
I profoundly agree with what everybody's saying. And I think that one of the core issues that we find right now that does impede us in terms of making a stronger statement on the streets, you know, protesting, coming out en masse, is that we don't have a centralized mandate. That is exactly what we need. We need an ask for the incoming administration, an ask that reflects what is most important for the Black community. What is the mandate? What do we give this administration in terms of what we need from them? And I think that we need to pull together across industries in order to get this done. I've actually written a mandate, with about, I think it's about 8 central issues, for the Black community. If anybody is interested in this panel, I would be happy to pull it together for us. I would be happy to lead the charge, at least with the people on this panel, so that we can have a conversation around what the issues might be. What I pull together might just be a small thought starter, but at least something so that we can begin to organize around a central ask for this incoming administration, and something for other people to rally around as well.
Jacqueline.
Well, shout out to Congresswoman Beatty and Amy. I love the top 5. Let's talk specifically what we want as people. I mean, we're talking about health. We want access to health on equity. We want better opportunities for Black businesses. One of the things I want to send home to all of you is housing. People don't have housing security. Mm-hmm. They don't have home ownership. They don't have any place to sleep at night. And I rarely hear in these conversations the importance of housing Black Americans. So can you please put that on your list as a platform that we need to be pushing for? But I would love to get behind the top 5 and push hard. We're all connected in sisterhood. I'm not in a fraternity, but I'm definitely connected to the links. And I am so excited to say that, that we can really make a change if we have one voice. So Congresswoman Beatty and Amy and everyone else, I would love to get on one page on a few things.
I do want to speak to the issue of the church. I want to speak to Pastor Haynes and Bishop McKenzie, because again, I think one of the things that when you step back and study in terms of, again, our history, when you look at the Black freedom movement, some call the civil rights movement, and the reality is whether you were Black, you had money, no money, whether you had a college degree, no degree, no high school diploma, you were impacted by Jim Crow. And so that focus to change these systems, to break down Jim Crow, to break down institutional racism, was really appealing to federal legislation to do that. The reality, though, and which is why I think the agenda piece, I agree with what folks said, but the agenda piece today is a lot different, because it really, to the point, and I forgot who actually made this point, how are you focusing on sectors? Because like, what is your area? Congresswoman Beatty asked that. I mean, I know for me in media, this is what the sector is, but it may not be what somebody else's interest is. For Pastor Haynes and Bishop McKenzie, I'll start with you first. Again, how are you with all of the ask of the Black church? What is your advice to get folks to understand what their focus has to be, what that pastor, the ministry leaders has to be? Are you saying, hey, folks, this is federal, this is state, this is county, this is city, this is school district, and there are different asks, and you have to approach them in different ways, as opposed to this one shot, it covers everything?
I would say that we have to understand that we have to stop waiting for people to put our agenda together. What's your agenda for us? What's your agenda for us? We need to develop the agenda together.
Right.
We've had great conversations. We've talked today. We have been Zooming since COVID hit about what to do and how to do and how to do it. I think it's time for stop talking and stop acting, that we rise above our own self-interest and egos and come to the table and say, this is what needs to be done. We can't do everything, but we certainly can choose 5, 7, or 10 things to do. In the faith community, we have been taking care of churches and communities forever. If it wasn't for some local churches, the people in the neighborhood would not be fed. They would not have access or nowhere to go to get help. They would not have an advocate if someone gets arrested in jail. They would not have somebody to speak up for them. They would not be a soup kitchen or a place. Pastors have reached into their pockets and paid for someone to spend the night in the hotel who was they would not have food and masks and things that were taken down to persons who are homeless and who are in the street. And so there is a role to play. But what I'm saying is that I'm tired of talking. I need to see some action. We haven't talked about criminal justice. The numbers runner was a pariah in the community forever, until folk found out that pick 3, pick 4, pick 5 is going to make somebody some money. We talk about somehow at the country club, addictions is a disease. In the neighborhood, it's a crime. In the country club, they ought to have They have a whole future ahead of them. So they shouldn't have a criminal record. But in the neighborhood, yeah, this is who you are. And systems, yes, the system that public school, the pipeline prison is a reality. It is not a myth. And so we haven't talked about funding education, not just funding public education so someone can have a job that is not going to pay and not going to take care of their family. We need to talk about the values that we teach, the education that is needed to get our kids into science and engineering and into math and into technology, which is going to be our future. And so when we come and talk, Congresswoman Beatty and to others who are in other areas, stop coming to us and asking us to co-sign your agenda. Invite us to the table. We can think, we have intellect, we can talk. We have been in the trenches making bricks without straw. So invite us to the table because we can tell you what works, because we have tried some things. And it's going to take you 2 to 5 years to catch up to what we have already done.
Well, Pastor Haynes, that first of all, Bishop is right. But here's the thing, though. And when I had Ice Cube on my show, when he came up with his contract with Black America, this is what he said. He said, well, I came up with this after the death of George Floyd because I didn't see anybody else with a plan. I said, bro, there are lots of people out here with plans. The issue, as far as I'm concerned, is not we don't have plans. The issue is not we don't have agendas to drive change. The problem is if you have an unorganized community, and when I say community, I'm speaking nationally, regionally, state, city, neighborhood, block, street, house. I'm speaking churches, organizations, civic clubs, business organizations. When you have these silos, then what you have is you have limited focus on the agenda. And so again, I think if we go back and actually sit down and look at the infrastructure that we have, is it operating at maximum efficiency in order to be able to address these issues? CBC has an agenda. CBC actually has put various things in the Jobs and Justice Act that got passed by the House, but it's being held up in the Senate, which means that if you don't focus on Georgia, Warnock and Ossoff, if they win, Democrats now control, now you can drive the agenda. Those pieces are all go together, but it can't be seen as a singular thing. Oh, if the CBC does this, it'll happen. Maybe that's just the House. You still got to deal with the Senate.
Right.
And Roland, just let me quickly say on this, because I hear the bishop and she's right. But if we're not in the room and if we don't get your ideas into the plans, or maybe we need to do a better job, because Roland's right. We have the Jobs and Justice. Most Black people haven't read it, even if they heard about it. Housing is one of our #1 issues. So Jackie, I am so glad you brought that up. We did forbearance with mortgage. We did stopping the evictions. And when you talk about testifying, I had 32 women, the most they've had in the history of Congress, come in and testify in my subcommittee on one of the most powerful committees. 15 of those women were Black and 8 were brown. And so, but that's because we were in the room, and with Maxine and I together, we could do, but this is the first time this has ever happened in the history.
But the reason no one knows that is because I go back to when you do not have a media infrastructure that's covering that, because mainstream is not, no one is going to know. And so that's one of the, again, I keep, Pastor Haynes, all of these things are interconnected. And I think when we begin to look at them that way as connecting the dots, then when you lay it out, people go, oh, now I get it.
Yeah, and so I'll just say this, Roland. We have an opportunity right now to, in an Ella Baker fashion, organize, because the bottom line is we just showed during the most recent election that we are really good at aiming at the top of the ticket because we see a common enemy. And as a consequence, all over this country, we organized and mobilized and utilized the infrastructure that really is already there to see faith communities, Divine Nine, and call the roll of all of those various community entities and organizers that came together because we saw a common enemy at the top of the ticket. What we did not do, to your point, is we did not go all the way down ballot. So even though we did really well, for example, in Texas, we scared the daylights out of the Republican Party right here in Texas at the top of the ticket. But when we went down ballot, we did not have the kind of infrastructure organization to say, okay, we got to hit this thing at the state level. We got to hit this thing at the legislative state level, the Senate state level. We've got to hit this thing at the school board, at the city level. And as a consequence, even though we had the numbers at the top of the ticket to create a lot of waves, it did not translate down ballot. And so what we have to recognize is we have to have a holistic vision. A holistic vision says it starts on the local level because all politics is local, but it must also go to the county level. It must also go to the state level, and of course at the national level. In many instances, we invest all of our energy at the top because that's all we see, because we don't watch Roland Martin Unfiltered, and because we are not aware of all the issues that go on the local level. We had a Black person running for the for governor of the state of Indiana. He got no play unless we got him with Roland Martin. And the bottom line is, unfortunately, we can get energized about the top of the ticket. Yes, we must do that, but that can't be the end all be all. If the reckoning and the reconstruction is to take place, it must take place on all levels, and it requires our infrastructure to come together. I'll say this and I'm done. Martin Luther King Jr., 1963. I Have a Dream is not just poetry. It's a vision with an agenda. Oftentimes we forget about the fact that in 1963, they had a policy agenda. That policy agenda was not just expressed in the poetry of the dream. It was expressed in, these are the policies we are putting forth for Congress to pass. This is what we are saying we want done. I read one this morning, Roland, where they said, if you do not abide by this, then you do not have access to government federal resources. That's the kind of policy agenda that we must have. So we've got to, if we're going to lift up Dr. King, lift up the Black Panthers and their 10-point program, it all starts with a vision. You will not have an organization that is organized if there is no vision. And once you have a vision that orders the steps of your agenda, then you can start talking about power that is able to agitate and ensure that, I love the fact that we never had, and let's be honest, we've never had a president-elect in his acceptance speech say, African Americans, you've had my back, I'm going to have yours. It's our opportunity. Thank you, Congresswoman Beatty. It's our opportunity now to show him what we define having our back looks like. We don't need Biden to tell us this is how I'm gonna have your back. No, you've already said you're gonna have our back. Now we're going to show you what that looks like. And when we show him what it looks like, here it is at the federal, at the state, at the county, at the local level, then we begin to exercise power and the dream of Dr. King becomes a reality.
I will close out with, I will close.
Real quick to your point, I'm sorry.
Literally 30 seconds.
Wrapping up, but
30 seconds.
Okay. I think, let's look at Georgia and what's at play and what's at stake at Georgia. I think that represents an ideal opportunity for us to sort of draw upon, because it's a state level and some of us who aren't there don't have the opportunity to vote, but we can work with the faith-based organizations in Georgia. We can activate again the Boulay, the Links, all the folks, the the historically Black colleges, in terms of just using our connected power to really sort of force folks to look at how important this election is in terms of the ability for Congresswoman Beatty and others to get things done. So if we just even start with that election as an opportunity for us to mobilize and to support what's happening or needs to happen in Georgia to affect meaningful change, I would just like to offer that up as something that we can all participate in, even as we look at putting forward the agenda to the incoming president and vice president's team.
Let me close this out this way, and that is on Tuesday, the American Heart Association declared structural racism a national health crisis, and of course, is a major cause of premature death. When you start unpacking that, we know exactly how that impacts folks all across this country. This is not solely a political thing. This is not a Democratic thing. This is not a Republican thing. This is an American thing. The reality is, in states all across the South, in fact, not all across the South, in this country, Republicans control 31 state legislatures. We have a split control there in Congress. Our responsibility is to put pressure on Democrats and Republicans to address the issue of structural racism, because that is an American thing. And so what has to happen in terms of how we move forward, I believe individuals have to say, what is my commitment to honoring what the American Heart Association has laid out, and how am I going to be a difference maker? Now the individual then says, what's now my points of influence in terms of what's my company, what's my church, what's my entity, what's my organization, and how I'm going to get them to move on this as well. The reality is, this is not going to be solved by Black America. It is not going to be solved by Latino/Hispanic America. It's not going to be solved by women. It's not going to be solved by men. It's going to be solved by everybody. But we must be using our infrastructure, our power, and our leverage to impact it politically, socially, culturally, and economically. And that, folks, is how we can make changes. And then we must follow through on it as best as we can. I want to thank everybody for being on our panel today. Thank you so very much. Don't forget to folks tune in next week when the American Heart Association has their talk with Wes Moore, the CEO of Robin Hood. And so we certainly look forward to that community transformation conversation. And for all of you who missed the early part of this, we live stream this on the American Heart Association social media channels, as well as Roland Martin Unfiltered. And so you can catch it a little bit later. Folks, thank you so very much. Have a fabulous day.